Welcome to Business Beyond the Mic, where we join Carli Van Heerden, CEO and founder of We Edit Podcasts. Together, let's uncover the art of podcasting.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Business Beyond the Mic. I'm your host, Carli Van Heerden. Today on the show, I'm excited to introduce a brand new series. Now, this series is based off of the Founders Corner, which is a segment in our We Edit Podcast newsletter. And I'm so excited about this because I absolutely love writing these pieces. So I thought I would bring them to life right here on the podcast. Now, in each of these episodes, I will be giving you actionable advice on growing your podcast, making big mindset shifts, essentially everything that is the business beyond the mic. And for this first episode, we dive into what it takes to truly make your podcast stand out in the sea full of microphones. So without further ado, let's get into this first new episode. Hello everyone, and welcome to this brand new series, The Founders Corner. And today on the show, I wanted to tackle the question, how do I make my podcast stand out? As we all know, there are tons of podcasts out there. I mean, over 5 million right now, and that means over 70 million episodes between them. Last week alone, there were over 200,000 episodes published, and according to Podcast Business Journal, that means there's a new episode published every 0.8 seconds. Now, I'll admit these stats can be scary, and you can think, how am I going to stand out? This is totally saturated. What are we going to do about it? Now, if this is what you're thinking, and you can relate, then this episode is for you. And I just want to remind you that these might be scary stats, but it also can be truly inspiring because that just means that there is space for everyone in the podcasting sphere, and the room just keeps on growing. So instead of being intimidated and wondering how you're going to stand out, why don't you think about asking yourself this question? How can I make myself stand out in a sea full of microphones? So today we're going to dive into the key tips that I put into practice and can help you on this journey of standing out. So the first tip is to be the odd one out. Now, research shows that we are more wired to spot the odd one out. So you're actually uniquely wired to see in a sea full of beige camels, you're going to spot the pink one. Of course, you're going to remember it. So find ways to make yourself stand out and be that odd one out. Now, what does that mean for you as a podcaster? Okay, let's look at 3 different ways. So the first is your artwork. You can be totally creative with your artwork and find ways to stand out in that crowd. You can think outside the box, find ways to really bring your creativity to the front and use that in your artwork. And so even if you've been in the game for a really long time, maybe it's time for a revamp, maybe it's time for a rebrand, and get your listeners involved and find ways to really stand out in something as simple as your podcast artwork. And the second way is through your guest interviews. Now, when you're having somebody on your show, think about why they would want to promote it. And I've said this before, instead of sharing another copy-paste interview that they've done with other podcasters before, think about 3 things that they always talk about, write them down, and then draw a line through that. And brainstorm 5 new topics so you can be the odd one out. And then, ta-da! Pink camel status achieved. And the third way is by adopting a really unique marketing strategy. Now, when it comes down to it, it really about how well you promote your episode once it's released. And now being, a goose in a duck marketing world can be tricky because you have to think outside the box, yet stay on trend. So what path do you follow? The key is to promote it on as many platforms as possible using rich sound bites, great quality audio, video, and everything in between. And not only that, be involved in your group, be involved with your listeners, engage with your audience, find people asking those specific questions that your podcast is answering and send it to them. Repurpose your content in as many ways as you possibly can so that you can become the most consistent promoter of your podcast out there. The next step to standing out is to Be outrageous and not ordinary. Now, don't worry, not all of us can be outrageous podcasters, but there's always a way to get inspiration from others who are doing it in the industry. So how can you avoid being ordinary? Let's look at examples like Alex Cooper from Call Her Daddy, or Logan Paul from Impulsive, or Cameron Hanes from the Keep Hammering Collective. All of them are doing something that's completely out of the box, and you find that you can just simply tick it by doing something different. With Call Her Daddy, Alex Cooper set a new standard for the dating advice and relationship by totally replacing it with outrageous stories. Now that is definitely ticking the out of the ordinary box. Now, on the other hand, someone like Cameron Hanes took a new approach by marrying his podcast with a video series and actually inviting guests to join him in all of the lift, run, shoot activities, and which completely created a whole new approach to podcasting. And I mean, there are a ton of other examples out there, but ultimately what they achieved is finding a way to be totally different than the ordinary way of doing things. And finally, tell a relatable story. Storytelling is one of the most amazing qualities that humans have developed over time. I mean, as a mom, every night I read countless stories to my children and watch them in turn tell me their own stories. It's because we all have that storytelling superpower within us. But as life moves on, somewhere along the line, we've decided to suppress that, which can be the worst thing that you can do as a podcaster, because storytelling is absolutely key when it comes to separating great brands and great individuals from the rest of the crowd. Now let's take it one step further into the power of relatability. So think of your favorite podcast host, movie star, reality TV star, and what about them attracts you most to what they do? It's that you can relate to them and it reminds you of yourself. Having a relatable story could be the key to helping you stand out in that crowd. Every story that you tell should make your listeners feel seen, and ultimately it'll draw in so many more new listeners to your show and create those lasting connections with your audience. So find that relatability and you'll become a better podcaster, a better storyteller, and ultimately become that headphone in the sea of microphones. So I hope that helps you understand the concept of standing out when it comes to your podcast, and that not to be intimidated by the stats and the saturation of the podcast sphere, but to be inspired by everybody else out there and to find your pink camel status. Ultimately, you have to embrace your individuality, hone your craft, your storytelling, and find ways to authentically connect with your audience. And by doing so, you will not only stand out, but you will leave your unique mark on the world. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and I will see you next time.